Hey guys. First of all, if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe now because it's been almost 9 weeks in the coming, and next Sunday, a week from today, will be my business plan. And I know that everybody's here for financial videos, and that is sort of the mother of all financial videos on my channel where I'm going to be building from for the next few years. So you don't want to miss that. So please subscribe for it. Um, Today, I actually want to talk to you guys about something I mentioned in my video from last week. I kind of mentioned it and I realized it didn't make sense out of context, so I wanted to talk about it here. I said I don't want kids, and that was, and basically I think that for me is a normal statement, so I didn't really think anything about it. But I know that like 95% of the population want kids. So when I say I don't, it always requires a little bit of an explanation. So starting off, um, I remember when I was young, little, I don't remember how old, and my little cousin was born and she was a baby and I got to like hold her in my arms and stuff. That's really my only experience with a actual infant type child. Um, my parents are both from very large families, but my uncle had a small family, my mom had a small family, and I wasn't exposed to kids or babies. And that's kind of the issue, I think, with my baby cousin. It was just kind of a very awkward experience of holding her and caring for her. Um, and then as I got older, I didn't really ever have any other interaction with kids that were younger than just a few years younger than me. I was always around adults. I suppose you could say when I was in college, I was around people younger than me because I was in college for a long time. But that was just a few years difference. They weren't babies. Um, and I think my biggest struggle with that is not only am I a little creeped out by the actual babies, and of course, I'm not changing a diaper, and they make messes and all that stuff that goes into it. That stuff I'm avoiding too, but I think that's kind of just stuff you'd expect a guy to want to avoid about a kid. Um, so I'm not even mentioning that stuff. But for me, with kids, it's awkward because I don't know how to act around them. And as a man, you're always like, everybody just automatically assumes if you're talking to a kid, you're a pedophile. So I'm like afraid of that too. But it's also, um, I treat them exactly as if they're adults because I don't know how to treat them otherwise. I treat a kid as if they're my equal. An example being, in our office we have candy, and sometimes the kids come in and ask for candy. Well, everybody else that works in the office is good with kids, and they're like, oh no, go ask your parents, or no, we don't have candy. They just lie to them and say we don't have candy. And I'm like, for me, it's more of like a call and response kind of thing. Child comes into the office, says, do you have candy? And I think, I do have a bag of candy in my desk. I was like, yes, child, would you like a piece of candy? And it's a very, like, they ask a question, I give them an honest answer kind of thing. And I don't put more thought into it than that. It's just, they're a customer here, provide customer service. And there was an incident where this kid, he's a kindergartner this year, lives on my property, and he missed the bus his first day of kindergarten. And he comes into the office, we're like trying to convince him to go to school, but at that point the bus is already gone, and we were like, well, what do we do? And I was like, I mean, I guess we call him an Uber, and just, I guess I'll pay for the Uber. And that was literally my thought process, and that made so much sense to me. I mean, the kid missed the bus. I wasn't gonna spend my money to drive him there, but I mean, that's what you do. Somebody needs a ride, you call him an Uber. So again, like, I just treat them like little adults, and people think that's weird. And I think the kids think it's weird too because, um, yeah, they just kind of look at me weird when I do stuff like that because it's different than how other people treat them. Um, but it's not just the not knowing how to act around a kid. Like, I do have some, because I get that people are going to say, oh, well, you just have more experience around them, like, that's going to subside. And that might be the case. But there's a few other things. Because, first of all, a lot of the kids here in the complex are unruly. And it is not my job to take care of your kids. I think a lot of parents have the attitude that it's like, oh, it takes a community to raise a child. I didn't sign up for this. Okay? You went out, you had your fun, you have a kid because of it. You know, I kept myself under control and don't have a kid. So I did my job in not having to deal with that. It is not my responsibility to take care of your kid. And it actually makes me pretty angry when a lot of parents do just expect, oh, you're an adult, like, you know, you helped parent this child. I'm like, nope, not mine. Get it away. So I don't hate kids. I mean, I guess I'd say in general, I'm like, oh yeah, I hate kids, because of the way they do, and you know, they're loud and destructive and stuff. But I don't hate them individually, and I'm never mean to a kid because they're a kid. Like, I get that that's how they're supposed to be. I get that it's probably more the parents' fault than their fault, whatever they're doing that's bothering me. But I do have some legitimate reasons for not wanting kids. And one of them is just very straightforward. And unfortunately, it's not something that a lot of parents consider. And it's the same reason I don't have a puppy. And it is that I can't afford a puppy or a kid. If I were to get a puppy, I want to make sure that I can get insurance for it. I want to make sure I can take it to the doctor, that I'm able to feed it. Sometimes I can't feed myself, so a puppy's not an option right now. Unfortunately, that kind of stuff is very apparent to most people when you get a puppy, but it's not for a kid for some reason. And I do think that that's extremely selfish for people who choose to have children when they're struggling financially, to decide to have a kid, because it's like, okay, you can't support yourself. How are you going to support this kid? Like, what kind of life is this kid going to have? And I know that doesn't sound like somebody that hates kids, and that's what I mean. I don't hate them individually. But that is definitely something I take into consideration. And, you know, being a financial vlogger, part of it is I have to think about everything from a point of finances. And it takes hundreds of thousands of dollars to raise a child. I don't have that. So, there is another issue too. And that is, I'm too old. I'm 31, I'm turning 32 this year. And I know I'm going to get a lot of comments saying you're not too old to have a kid. Yes, I can still have a kid physically, yes. And with men, I mean, you know, I've heard of guys in their 70s and 80s that are having children. But that's not the point. I mean, I'm too old to relate to the kid. And let me explain what I mean. My mom was 36 when she had me. That's pretty late, all right? Now, I know if you get 40 and up, you start having some risks of problems with the child. As far as I know, I don't have any of those, but you know, the older the woman is, the more possible complications there could be, or problems with the child. And that's kind of, you know, not cool. You know, if you get to 40 and you're like, oh, I don't have a child and I'm just going to do it despite the risks, well, that's kind of selfish. I mean, you got to weigh all the different things going on there and decide if that's the best decision, but that is a little bit of selfishness. So, what I want to do is, if I were to have had kids, I would have wanted to have them in my, say, 20s, early to mid 20s, maybe even late 20s. But me being in my early 30s now, not having a girlfriend, not even having a committed relationship on the horizon, I don't want to have kids because my mom was old enough to be my grandmother when she had me. Even by legal standards. Like, it's not like, oh, you know, maybe she was 30 and if she was 15 and then another kid at 15. No. Like, my mom would have been 18, had another kid, and then 18 years later, that kid had me. Like, there's an entire generation gap between my mom and I. She was born in 1949, and she just turned 68 on Friday. So, it's like there is a huge gap because um, I mean, it skipped an entire generation. And as far as us understanding each other, getting along, things like that, it really does have a lot of effect on that. So the closer in age you are to your kids, I think the better understanding there is going to be between them. I remember growing up, it caused a few issues. Like, they couldn't help me with homework. They'd never seen stuff like that before. They were older, so they were in their mid 40s growing up, 50, and then they didn't want to go out and play with me. I just kind of had to go in my room by myself and find something to entertain me. There was a lot of stuff like that, and if I stopped and thought, I could come up with some more specific examples, but I just don't want to put a kid through that generation gap again. And so at this point, because I've had that point of view in the past, I think that it would be very hypocritical of me to change my mind just because I want a kid, to say, oh, well, yeah, I thought that in the past, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I don't think that's right. And the final thing is, and you guys can probably tell from some of my videos in the past, I didn't really get to have a childhood. From the earliest that I can remember, I parented my parents because they both act like they're two. And that hasn't really changed. The only difference is my dad doesn't really speak to me, so I don't have to deal with him too much. My mom, though, yeah. Yeah, there was a period of time where she kind of got her shit together a little bit, but now we're back to me pretty much taking care of her. In fact, I'm in the process of getting legal guardianship of my mother right now, through the court system. So that's a long story, and I'll make a video about that eventually. But, you know, I am legally going to become my parents' parent, even though I've been fulfilling that role my whole life. And when you're a little child, whether you be elementary, middle school, junior high, or even in college, and you have to guide your sort of unruly, childish parents in the ways things should be, and what is acceptable behavior, it's really unfortunate because you never get to experience childhood. And for me, not only was it that, but it was a lot of neglect by them. It was a lot of them not wanting to spend any money on me, period, which goes back to the finance part of it. Um, it it goes into a lot of things, and obviously I can't make this video all about that. There's a lot of underlying issues about how screwed up my childhood was. But I definitely want to have the opportunity to go out and live my life, to travel, to just have fun, to do all the things I've never got to do. And I can't do that when I'm a kid, if I have a kid, because I'm going to be trying to get those experiences for the kid, and I'm also going to be dealing with the responsibility of having them. Whereas my idea is, once I get my passive income going, I can go be a kid. I can go imagine, I can go play for the first time in my life. It's like childhood plus, because you get to go out and do all the things you should have done as a kid, but now you don't have as many rules because you're an adult. And that's what I'm really looking forward to, is being financially independent and being able to do that. So I hope I didn't offend anyone in this video. That's not my intent, but I wanted to explain what I meant by not having kids and why I don't want that. And I know everybody says that's going to change in time, but here I am almost 32, it's not changed, and I just don't think it's going to. So I don't know how many of you out there have kids. Obviously, if you do, you probably don't agree with me. But for those of you who don't, you know, it's okay. You get a lot of questions when people find out you don't want it, but that's okay. You can be vocal that you don't want it. So if you guys will go ahead and subscribe below, there should be a link at the end of this video too. Remember, business plan up next week, next Sunday. It's going to be amazing, and you guys will really see where I'm headed in life. Thanks for watching. See you next week.